So I'm just going to run through the steps for answering regression questions so that you can watch this video as many times as you need to understand the steps. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we'll be given a data set. Now, we did this as a class already, but this is just so you can see how it's going to work. All right, so the first thing we do is we're given this data set here, and so we need to enter that into calculator. So if you're on your home screen, all right, you need to start by pushing stat, edit, so I'm going to push enter, and now I'm going to type in my x values in L1 and my y values in L2. So my x values here are the weight values, so I have 5, 7, 10, 14, 18, and 22. And then I'm going to put my y values in L2, and here the y, the dependent variable, is the cooking time. All right, so changing the weight of the turkey changes how long we have to cook it. So I have 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5.75.
This now concludes
6. All right, 6.755 and 8.25. All right, so now that the data is in there, we're going to have to first look at what the plot looks like so that we can make sure we decide on the right function. Now, a lot of times it's going to tell you what type of function you need to make, so sometimes you don't even have to look at the plot to start with. But either way, you're going to eventually have to look at the graph of this. So to do that, you push second, and you'll see above y equals is the word stat plot in blue. So you go second, stat plot, and then you'll see that this one, we're just going to work with plot 1. This one's off. So we're going to push enter, and the first thing we do is see how it's flashing on. Off is highlighted right now, but if we want to change it to on while it's highlighted there with the flashing cursor, we just push enter, and now it's on. Then we need to make sure it's on the scatter plot. If it's not, just highlight it and push enter, and then we need to think where we put our x values. We put them in L1, and where we put our y values, we put them in L2. So I'm going to say second, L2. All right, so now you want to make sure it's not typing on one of these two, otherwise zoom 9 is not going to work. So just put it anywhere else on the screen and push zoom 9. All right, and that shows us the data automatically. Okay, so this would be the scatter plot, and I'm not going to sketch it right now because you can see it right there. All right, so we have to think about what type of function does the graph show. Now this one doesn't tell us what type to use, but we can clearly see that this has a linear relationship. So we would use a linear regression. Okay, so now we're going to find the regression equation. To do that, I'm going to quit this. I'm going to go back to stat, and I'm going to go calculate something now. All right, now I want to calculate linear regression. That's number 4. If it said quadratic, you'd use 5. And if it said exponential, you'd use 0. If it said power, you'd use A. And I think it might make you use this in one of the practices. That's the natural log regression. But for now, we're just doing linear. So we'll say linear regression. And then it asks us, where'd you put your x values? Ours are in L1, so we're good there. And then it says, where'd you put your y values? Ours are in L2. So we'll change that to say L2. So I'd go second, and then L2. It's right there above the 2 button. All right, frequency list will always be blank. And then to store the regression equation, if you have a TI-84, you can say alpha, trace, and then select Y1, enter. All right, if you don't have a TI-84 or it's not updated, you can push vars, arrow over to Y vars, choose number 1 function, and then Y1's right there, so say number 1. Either way, it'll put it there, and you want to make sure you do this so you can let the calculator help you answer questions. So you push enter to calculate, and there's our regression equation. Now, you probably won't get the r squared and the r, and that's okay. Okay, now this is not the equation yet. I have to plug these into the formula it's giving me. Okay, so let me make this smaller so we can still see. All right, so to find it, okay, I have y equals, okay, and now you'll see a is 0.2748. Okay, so we'll say 0.2748. You see a is multiplying x, that's our slope, So then we'll put X and then plus B, right? So we'll say plus 1.978 or something like that. Okay, so that's a shortened version. You don't have to use more decimals than that, really. But it might slightly change your answers, but it's whatever. And now, because we put the y1 there, we already have the function plotted in y1. So if we go back to the graph, we should see it graph the regression equation now. All right, so perfect, it's graphed. So now we have two questions we need to answer out this, and these are basically all the types of questions you might be asked. This first one says, use your regression equation to predict the cooking time for a turkey that weighs 35 pounds. So our first question, or first thing we need to ask ourselves is, am I being given an X value or a Y value here with this 35 pounds? So I can go back up to my chart and look for pounds. Pounds here is my X value that I used originally. So we'll call that X, we'll call this Y. All right. So we're given an X value here. So what that means is I'm going to have to use trace. I'm going to use the trace function. The problem is if I can't see 35 on my graph yet, it's not going to work. So I have to adjust my window. So I go to my window to see if I'm going to be able to see 35. I go to my window, I can see that the X maximum, or the biggest X value I can see, is only 23.7. So we're going to adjust this number so that 35 is included, so we're going to be able to see it. So I'm going to go a little over 35, which is good practice, and just say, let's go up to 40. Okay. Looking ahead at number 7, it gives me 10 hours, which is a Y value. So I also want to make sure that I can see 10 in my Y range here. So let's change the Y max to be, let's just go to 15 maybe. Let's just do 20. All right, I always like to go a little overkill. It helps. Now if we go back to our graph, we can see that our window looks really different. Okay, so now we know this 35. Okay, and so your first option would be to plug 35 into the regression equation here and just type that into your calculator. You'll get an answer. Another way you can do it, though, is once you're on this screen, push trace. All right, now automatically it's going to jump to your points. Okay, you don't want it to be on the points in order to use this little trick. Okay, you want to go up to the regression equation. If you have something else graphed, it might not automatically jump to the regression equation, but you need it to be on the regression equation. Now that it's on the regression equation, I can just type in my X value. So I'll say 35, and then I push enter, and it jumps automatically to the Y value that goes with it. So to answer this question, it would take 11.595 hours to cook. So I'm going to say Y equals 11.595 hours. All right, this other one says use your regression equation to predict how much a turkey weighed if it took 10 hours to cook. All right, so this is asking a little bit different. We're given a Y value now. And so what we're really doing is we're setting up an equation that says 10 equals, and then my regression equation. Okay, because we know the Y value here. All right, we know the Y value, so that's what we replaced, but we don't know X. So because this one's linear, it's easy to solve, but if it wasn't linear, it would be pretty tricky. So we can again use our calculator, and we talked about this, to solve any equation, set the left equal to one of your equations and set the right equal to the other. So we're going to go back to Y equals. Here's the right already plotted in Y1. So we're going to put the left piece, 10, in Y2. So we'll put 10 in there, and we'll push graph. Now it's graphing this line, okay? The solution will be at the intersection. So go second, calc, intersect, number 5. All right, and then I just push enter, 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 and it tells me that turkey weighed 29.2 pounds. All right, and so that's basically it. The only other question is about a maximum, and I'll upload a second video for that one. Good luck.